Hi, I'm Paul Camillos. Join me and my co-host Jacinta Govind for Series 4 of Shooting the Breeze. We cover women's hoops and women in hoops. We talk to inspiring players, amazing coaches, and the legends behind the scenes and at the grassroots of the game. During this series, we'll be covering the FIBA Women's World Cup, where the 12 best teams on the planet are coming to Sydney. And of course, we'll be covering Australia's longest-running women's professional sporting league, the WNBL, in its 43rd season. Hit that subscribe button, like and review so we can get more hoops content to you.
Fans don't just turn up. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, hey, we're good, we've signed a good player, we've got a good brand, we've got a good home court. The fans will just turn up. They won't. You have to go out and work for it and communicate and connect and love them and show them and give them and include them. And then maybe they'll come in through that door. And when they do come in through that door, put on the best bloody show that you can. Let them enjoy every second of it, because the game is only one part. It's a part, but it's one part. It's a car park to car park, driveway to driveway. Yep. Everything about them coming in, everything about them while they're there, everything about the journey home.
Welcome back to Shooting the Breeze. After a short break over Christmas and New Year, Series 4 returns with our biggest and maybe our most important pod to date. Taped in early January, this one is so big it's in two parts, and we're excited to share it. Joining us over the next two episodes is a panel of loyal and committed followers of some of the southeastern teams to get a real look into the hearts and minds of the fans. We're grateful to them for sharing an important perspective and openly discussing their views and opinions, giving a voice to the most important members of any WNBL team, the fans. Enjoy part 1. Welcome to Shooting the Breeze. Joining me and my co-host Jacinta Govind, we have a very special episode. We've got our fan podcast. So we've invited a few fans to join us so we can talk about their view of the WNBL and also to discuss issues around the WNBL. Now, before we get into it, Jacinta, this is one that we've been working on for a while, and we've kind of been really looking forward to this because I think there's a lot of opinion that we hear about the WNBL, but quite often we don't get the fan input into what's happening. So it's kind of something that we've really, I know you and I have talked about this one for a while, about trying to get this one happening.
Yeah, I agree. We've definitely been spitballing this one for a while, and I think, as you said, Paul, and we've said in other episodes too, we are also fans first, and we're very aware that it is the fans' loyalty and commitment to the WNBL that is ultimately keeping it alive. So we thought that this would be a good opportunity to give the fans a direct voice to share some of their opinions, because we've all spoken to our three guests individually, but it's going to be really interesting now to have three fans that we know as individuals in the same space to perhaps share similar experiences, or maybe even differing experiences too, good or bad.
Yeah. So let's introduce our fans to our audience. And first of all, we've got joining us Claire Nimmo from Melbourne, Lily Pedvin from Canberra, and Nick Walker from Sydney. Obviously, they are fans of their own individual teams. For Claire, it's the Melbourne Boomers.
That's right.
For Lily, it's the Canberra Capitals.
Go Caps.
Go Caps. And for Nick's got a foot in both camps of the OG Freeway series, the Caps and the Flames.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys. So, look, first of all, let me just throw it across to you guys and sort of ask, how long have you been following and supporting the WNBL? Claire, maybe we'll start with you.
So I think this might be our 6th season as members of the Boomers. And And my daughter plays for Bulleen, so we have that connection club-wise with the Melbourne Boomers. So we started off by doing a couple of clinics with them and then just watched her grow alongside these players, and they just take them under their wing, and they're so inspirational that you can't help but follow them. And so as she started her basketball journey, we crossed paths with Cheryl Chambers. So we have a soft spot for the Flyers, but Melbourne through and through.
Okay, and Lily, how about you? How long have you been following the WNBL?
I'm actually old enough to have a signed poster that Squin signed for me when she was
I never knew that until Mary put it in an email, so I'm glad you brought it up because that blows my mind.
Yeah, I think going on like 18 years or so, we figured out the other day.
Now everyone can kind of figure out how long ago it was that I played now.
Okay, and Nick, how long have you been following the WNBL?
For me, I'm pretty new to the WNBL, so I only really started following it after the Olympics a couple of years ago. So I watched the Olympics, didn't go the way we hoped, but I really enjoyed watching them play. Went from there to the WNBA, and then jumped on the WNBL train when that started up in, I think it was December that year, so about 2 years now.
Okay, cool. So it's great. We've got kind of like a broad range of time engaged with the WNBL, which is really fantastic. So I want to ask, and I'm going to open it up to anybody who wants to sort of start giving out some of your own personal opinions and experience. What do you guys think about the game day itself?
I love game day.
Mm-hmm.
I think for us, we count down to game day because we don't get one every week. And so, I think the Boomers do a great job on sort of the social media, keep you really engaged in it. So, we're counting down to tomorrow's game. So, got my mum all geared up and got the kids ready to go. And it's like it's a big thing in the week on the calendar. So you get excited for it. You wait to see who your starting five are. Is Tess going to suit up? Is she not? So, and I think they do a really good job. And so when you get there, that atmosphere is already there. You're just ready to go with it even before the game starts.
Definitely. I was going to say, like, one of my points that I wrote down when Mary sent through the prompts was how good the Melbourne Boomers social media has been, and offering like exclusive t-shirts at games only drives me insane because I love every team, even though I am a Caps fan. But it's just seeing that you guys are doing like exclusive t-shirts as a merch option sold at one game only is a really cool and unique way of encouraging people to come, and obviously like showing support.
I always wonder though, is it wrong to wear, another club's t-shirt, like the GOAT, for instance? Like, who doesn't want a Lauren Jackson shirt? But it's not like you can wear that teal colour to a purple game. And it's sort of like, how bad are you that you're not supporting your own club? But then I think, well, I'm actually supporting everybody. So, I think that's the way I feel. It's like, I wish you could just proudly wear it all and not feel so bad about not, always cheering on your own club.
Yeah, I can see the point on that one. And what about you, Nick? What's your, particularly because you've been engaged with the WNBL for just a couple of years, what's your feedback on game day?
Yeah, game day has been a bit weird in Sydney because it's not always the same experience, because sometimes you have those double headers and sometimes you have the standalone games. So you can get a bit of a different crowd in at both games. So I really look forward to it and seeing, which crowd we've got at which game. But it's always a good time. I think this year, because we had that long stretch on the road at the start of the season, there was a lot of excitement about that first game. And with it being the second game of a doubleheader, there was a really good crowd still in the stadium for the game. So that was a really good experience, that one. But it's been a bit up and down with the different stadiums.
Okay. I'm just, and this is more a broad one to whoever wants to jump in on this. What do you think could be done to improve game days?
Don't all go at once.
I'm just thinking of how to phrase things politely.
No. Okay. So look, let me just throw this out here. If there's something you think that's not done well, let's call it out. but we want to try and do it in a manner where we can sort of bounce around what we think could be a better way of doing things. So obviously you've got something that you want to say, so let's go with it.
I guess just having been around the league from 18 years and I'm now 27, I just look back at those early Caps games at the AAS where they were sponsored by like Bottles of Australia, and I still have my pink Carly Wilson one. Graham Bacco, the Caps physio that I still see, he was like the Opals physio as well. He has his like Bacco one still. So I look at all those experiences and I look upon them so fondly, and they were throwing out shirts and jerseys, and membership packs came with a jersey in them. And I just look at all these things and how much things have changed. None of the memberships offer a free jersey within the membership pack or anything like that. I kind of think, what are you giving fans at a game or in the membership pack that is special or different to what any other fan can purchase? And what are you doing to engage fans so when they go home or go to school, they have that drink bottle that they can take and they can show their friends and say, oh, this is my favourite player.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah,
not just representing like your club by turning up, but then from a player's perspective, everyone's decked out in the same stuff. It's almost like the fans have their own uniform as well.
Yeah. Definitely, and I've seen that when I've like even just changes from, I remember like Zala Bishop and Bo Beattie as young toddlers, and they had jerseys in toddler size that fit them. Little Opal May now runs around in like, I think it's one of Zala's old jerseys that Veely and Goz found in the back of one of the cupboards at UC Caps gym. And like, I don't know, it's just so disheartening. I last season saw Cam, Carly Wilson's husband, chasing around Lola and Opal May, Carly Wilson's kid and Alex Bunton's kid. And they both had hair ties holding up the back of their jerseys so they could run around the stadium. So I went to Kmart and I just said, you know what, I'm going to buy a cheap tie-dye shirt and dye it in Caps colours and make an iron-on vinyl patch. And I gave it to Bunts, and then I made a matching one for her mum the week later, so Opal and Ginny now match. But it's just, there's this whole, it's not easy to be a fan. And I just want that hurdle gone.
Okay. I want to throw out there that I think, in my opinion, from what I've seen, the quality of what is offered to the members in comparison to just somebody who walks in off the street to buy a ticket to watch a game has dropped over the last few years. Not so much for Melbourne, because I know Melbourne's been making a lot of effort in this space. What do you guys, I mean, first of all, do you agree with that? And if so, what do you think should be happening? And I think it's interesting, Claire, that because you've got an eye on what the Flyers are doing and what the Boomers are doing, you're probably able to see the differences between the two, the crosstown rivals.
Yeah. Well, they definitely got T-shirts and, definitely something that said season holder and when LJ's T-shirt came out, everybody had them. And whereas I looked at our membership pack this year, the same nylon scarf that is horrendous and this sort of calico bag that came from another sponsor, which had, paper face masks, like sort of mineral face masks. There was no sticker pack. There was other things that were listed that should have been in this massive bag. There was nothing in it. It was like you were literally looking at the bottom and just going, where is everything? So, before there's been an Adair's voucher or, things like that. But you got a photocopied sheet that gave you $20 off at the uniform place. But you go there and it's just a mess. So they're on a platform at the top of the Parkville Centre and it's just piles and piles of stuff. There's no order to it. And it's like, I just feel as though we should be, like Lily was saying, you should be treated just a little bit better than someone that buys a $10 general admission ticket. They can walk in and get a T-shirt. They can walk in and get a scarf. So I just, and I sort of feel they hand them out. So what am I actually getting for my gold membership that I've paid and through COVID kept with them, got nothing for it, and yet we come out of this, you've still got to go and buy the merchandise, You've still got to support them all that way, which I am hands down doing. But somewhere along the line, you just like to feel as though you're a little bit special. Instead of giving a WhatsApp phone number, here, give this a call, and nobody answers. So it's like, I want to support you 100%, but you're sort of not giving me enough either. So
just building off what Claire's saying, Caps also do the scarf. Why is a scarf being associated with a summer sport?
And it's the same scarf from seasons ago, and they're this nylon. They're not even long enough that you can wrap it round. It's just really poor. I would prefer a scarf like they do in the football that says, member and the year that you're there. And you can collect them. Or give me a badge that actually says member 2022 and I can collect them. I'm a middle-aged woman, but I want that badge. I want my girls would wear it on their blazer. They'd be proud to wear it. So these are tiny, tiny little things, but they make us feel as though actually someone recognises me as a member of this club. And, we see you and we thank you.
And on another really basic level, I looked up last season what the difference between a season membership was for a concession being a student last year and versus buying a ticket to each home game. There was a $12 difference. I emailed and asked if I thought they'd stuffed up the maths, and they said, oh, no, that's correct. I just feel like there needs to be something more in it, because if I miss one game, especially when COVID still being a thing, it's not worth it.
It's not. It's money in their pocket and not a lot either. So it's,
Okay, so Nick, I wanted to ask you, because you're really well placed to talk about Sydney.
Yep.
The first year, did you buy a membership?
I did buy a membership. I bought the Brightons membership for the 3 games there, and then a 3-game doubleheader membership as well.
Right. Did you get any merchandise with that?
I got absolutely nothing.
I got nothing.
Digital card that was basically a ticket into both stadiums, and that was all we got.
And does a doubleheader, sorry, Nick, is doubleheader the men's, Sydney Kings afterwards? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on the game, it could be either Kings first, Flames after, or the other way around. Okay, because my experience, because we bought the full year membership for the Flames, was last season there was a T-shirt thrown in that said Flames member for each one. This season it wasn't. I'm going to say that I can pretty comfortably say here that the experience of a member is probably a bit disappointing, because you're paying your money up front. Yes, you are getting the same seats game in, game out, but would it be fair to say that you don't feel like you get that little bit of extra recognition that you would like to, because you have committed to support the team for a full season?
Well, I'm not a member anymore just because of all the factors that we've spoken about. But I would like to say, building off what Nick was saying, the Caps didn't offer 3-game memberships or anything like that up until last season. And I just think that's such a great and possibly affordable thing for fans that are trying it out, seeing if they do or don't like it.
Can I just add, just going to put this gripe in there. I contacted the club because we're going to go to Bendigo on the weekend and watch, position 1 and 2 playoff. So I just contacted them and said, is there somewhere that all the Boomers away families are going to sit? And it just comes back, it's not a ticketed game for us. There's plenty, general admission would be your best bet. But there was nothing. There was no let's all try and sit in Bay 22 behind the bench. You're going to make an effort to travel a couple of hours up the road. I was really, really surprised. And I just sort of went, okay, that's great, thanks. Nothing.
That is pretty disappointing. One of the Flyers girls gave me their tickets to the Canberra game the other day. And so I know for a fact that at Canberra home games, the GM puts aside a bunch of tickets for certain people. And so Bendigo or Boomers should or could know where that would be. And asking to have a sea of purple is to the club's benefit, as far as I'm concerned.
That's exactly what I don't mind buying a general admission and I don't mind buying a seat. But all they had to say was, we're in this bay, right behind the bench, come along, wear your purple. Okay, but instead we'll go along and we'll probably sit away from everybody else because, until you can actually work out where you're supposed to be sitting and what seats aren't taken. I was a bit, as a member, again, that was through the members, private page. Yeah, just a little bit disappointed that there was no, you'd think top of the table, you'd want as many people to head on up the highway. So, yeah, disappointing again. Yeah.
Because I remember when the second grand final game in Dandenong for the Flames, the 16-17 season, and even I think a couple of years before that, even for a semi that was being played at Dandenong, any Flames fans who travelled down to the game were seated in a particular block of seats behind the Flames bench so that, you could see all the fans were sitting in one location. And to me, that seems like, sorry to put it quite this way, but it seems to me like it's a real slam dunk for the club to kind of go out there and do that one.
Yeah. And look, I understand. I worked out going through this membership period before this season started that they're only part-time workers at the Boomers and they're under the pump to try and get these tickets out, and it was a schmozzle. But you'd reckon that they'd be able to get their hands on, say, 100 tickets in the bay behind, and you just buy through the club. You say, I want 4 tickets. Doesn't sound like rocket science to me, but maybe it is. I don't know. Okay,
now, before we go into some other stuff about game day, Jacinta, you've been awfully quiet, but I've been noticing your responses and like your reaction to some of what you've been hearing. So I'd love to hear what you got to say on this.
No, I honestly am just enjoying listening. That's why I haven't really chimed in, because I don't want to take away any opportunity for the fans to speak. Because, there's a good chance for me not to speak and to sit out and listen. I was happy just listening. I really, really enjoy these kinds of discussions. But I think the other things that kind of came to mind when all three of you were speaking about game day experience, and especially if you're a member and you want to attend an away game, I know this may have perhaps been during finals time, so maybe an exception, but when the Tassie Jack Jumpers played the Kings in the last NBL final, I'm pretty sure that there was like blocks of seats for Tassie fans who made the trip. And that's in Kudos, which is massive compared to the venues that the WNBL teams play in. So I'm not too sure why, if, the size and manpower that are responsible for putting on the Kings games can organise that, why it can't be transferred into, where they play at Bendigo. I've been to that venue at Bendigo and it's lovely. There's no Kudos in terms of size. And how far do you need to travel to Bendigo, Claire, for that game?
Oh, it's 2 hours up the highway.
So that's I guess in a league sense that is an away game because you're going regional. But 2 hours, that's what I travel to go watch the Flames and the Kings on a weekend. Like, that's regular for me. So 2 hours isn't really much of a journey for Boomers fans to travel to watch an away game and have some representation. And Nick, earlier you mentioned your game day experience with the Flames, how it does change in the venue. I agree. It can sometimes be a little bit not unstable, but definitely shapes the experience it's not a consistent experience. And the one thing I've noticed is when they play at Kudos for the double headers, even though the most recent game had a really good attendance, a lot of it was still sitting in their ticketed seats. So it looks like we didn't have a big attendance because everyone was scattered. And I feel like if everyone was encouraged to sit closer, it would have a much better atmosphere.
Yeah. I noticed particularly with the most recent game where the Kings were on the second game, all the Kudos Bank Arena staff were going around making sure everyone was actually sitting in their right seats and kicking people out if they weren't sitting in the right section, which, when you're in the first half of the Flames game and there's only 1,000 people there max, it's a bit harsh to go and move people around when there's no one there sitting in the seats that they're in. But I guess that's the problem of the double headers.
Yeah, now that's an interesting point you raised there, Nick, because we were there and they were quoting numbers of 3,600 and something attending the Flames game. I'd love to know how that was calculated.
Very optimistic counting, that one, I think. I mean, I was speaking to a friend who said that they'd been at the bar across the road and they realised that the Flames game had started and they were trying to convince people to come across and watch it with them, and they were just going to stay in the bar and keep drinking until they wanted to come across. So I don't know how they got that high a number, but I'd love to see the counting.
Speaking of numbers, how impressive was Townsville's 2,789 or whatever it was? I'm absolutely stoked for them. How good.
Yeah, I got to say, that was a pretty impressive number. And I think also it's one of those stadiums I would actually like to go and see a game at, because Townsville seems to get right behind the club and they're right into it. So, yeah, I think that was a great number. But to me, I think that number for the last Sydney game, I'd love to know how it was calculated, because, yeah, it looked a bit optimistic and there must be a rationale for it. All right, let me ask you something about the entertainment at some games. And, Nick, I'm going to go to you first of all. How do you find the entertainment at the Key Centre?
They actually asked me to come down onto the court at Key Centre. Both the games I've been to, they've got me to come onto the court for some sort of in-game entertainment. The first one I was shooting for a free membership, and the second one I was doing a pre-game interview, and that was interesting. But I don't know how many other people in the stadium are actually paying attention to that sort of thing. Like, I know there were some people cheering me on when I was shooting, but I don't know how many people were listening to the pre-game interview. And some of the other stuff they do pre-game, like they have a DJ that they cut to that plays music, which, you know, it's fine, but it's just kind of there. Like, a lot of the entertainment stuff, I feel like we just do it because we're at a sporting game and we have to have entertainment, and we don't really put much thought into what we're actually doing. And it's just kind of like, well, you're here, you might as well watch it.
Okay. Now, the last one at the Kudos Bank game, how did you find the entertainment there?
It's definitely different being at Kudos. You know, you're in a bigger stadium, you've got more capabilities. Like, they do a lot of that sort of the crowd camera stuff. I know they had a music performance at one point with the DJs on the table, but it's definitely bigger. But I don't necessarily know that it's any more engaging than what you get at Key Centre. There's more of it and you have more capabilities with it, but it's still more or less the same sort of thing.
Okay, so now that we've kind of set a bit of a framework here, let's find out about Melbourne and Canberra. What's the entertainment like there?
I could pass on it, really.
I was about to say no comment.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was allowed to do that or not. And look, it's great for the kids. Okay, at the moment, you know, Signet is the big sponsor. So one of their main games is to be able to spell the name out, and then I think they win a power back. I'm not sure. You know, it used to be a Dares, and it was like, what kid wants to win an Adair's voucher? So I always used to laugh at that. These kids running around, and what are they going to do with a $50 voucher? Mum's going to love it, but not so much the kids. Yeah, look, for the kids, I think it's great. And, you know, everyone loves to have a laugh at Dexter, you know, when he comes out at the 3/4 time. Like, my kids used to run the conga line with Dexter, and now they just sit back and laugh at all the kids that are down there. So it's very, very child sort of orientated, which is fine. You know what I mean? You've only got to sit through it for, 15 minutes or something. To me, it's neither here nor there. I think it's blank space and people feel like they've got to fill it. But I'd prefer them to shoot T-shirts out of cannons, or, I don't know, do something a bit more. Get the Mexican wave going. I don't know, do something.
Lily, what about Canberra? And actually, Nick, it'd be good to hear your opinion of the differences between Canberra and Sydney too. So, but Lily, what's your...
Pretty much what Claire said, but honestly, like, as a woman in her mid-20s, I understand that kid engagement is so important, and having the kids come out and play at halftime occasionally is always great, and when someone finally gets a bucket, the crowd goes wild. But there just has to be something that engages everyone out there somewhere in the world of basketball.
Okay. Now, I know you've been to a couple of Canberra games. Do you see a difference between Canberra and Sydney in terms of their entertainment?
I don't think Canberra has as much multimedia sort of stuff. Like, they don't have those cameras where you're in the crowd pretending to play the bongos or pretending to ride a horse or something like that. It's more like someone's on the court, there's an MC, and, you know, calling out to the crowd. So it's not necessarily the same multimedia stuff, but I feel like being in Canberra, the crowd was buying into it a bit more than they are in Sydney. I think the experience in the Canberra Stadium when I was there was just a little bit more engaged than some of what I've seen at our games.
And I just wanted to bring up like the difference in venues. The Canberra Caps play at the National Convention Centre in Canberra, so it's actually not a sports stadium at all anymore, which is great in terms of air conditioning and seating comfort and good view of the court. But exactly what Nick was saying, there's none of that like multimedia aspect with screens or anything for us to engage with.
To be fair, though, the screens and the multimedia stuff is really only at Kudos. It's not at the Key Centre.
Yeah, I'm just interested to hear, like, Claire, what do they have at the boombox?
Nothing like that. Yeah. I'd love to go to a stadium with that, massive thing in the middle. And I just think, you get a bit of the sort of WNBA feel to it with the big things up the top. And, for us, we'd have to go to, I think the United and Phoenix play at John Cain Arena, and they have that type of stuff there. But, one day maybe there'll be a double header. You never know.
There you go, Claire. You've got a reason to come up to Sydney whenever the Boomers are playing to go to Kudos Bank Arena.
Was Kudos where the World Cup was?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was magnificent.
Yeah.
And all the content they had for that too. Obviously, we don't have the budget of FIBA, but just like everyone dancing on the screen, having like different interactives and getting people up and moving was really great.
Yeah.
Okay, so because we're kind of dealing with Melbourne, Bendigo, Sydney, Canberra, is anyone other than me stunned that no club actually turns around and figures out there'd be good sense to organise from early on in the season or even before the season starts a bus and scheduling to get fans engaged to go to those games which are within 2 to 3 hours drive? I'll open it up to all of you to give me your feedback on that as an idea.
I'm just going to say that comes down to there not being enough staff to be able to logistically organise something like that. Memberships for the Boomers, and I don't know about everybody else, but they come out so close to the very first game that it's nerve-wracking that you're actually going to get to a game and you don't have a membership ticket in your hand or any proof that you've spent money buying these memberships. So let alone trying to organise something that's in, say, round 7 or 8, not a chance. And that would just purely be because there's no office staff to do that. Why isn't there a company that oversees the whole of the, travel arrangements for the WNBL? Why doesn't someone get on board and organise party buses from, one place to the next? That's a great idea.
And also, isn't there like a new league sponsor for travel or something that we see at halftime as well? Like, imagine if they did something amazing for the fans, like organise a bus to Sydney. I'd absolutely love that. I'd be first person on that bus.
You'd be fantastic.
I think it's strange that the Kings and the Hawks make such a thing about the Freeway series with Illawarra, and they don't do anything at all for the Flames and the Cats. I mean, it's not that much further to Canberra from Illawarra. It's the closest team to us. Why not have something about it?
Okay, I'm going to go out and say this. I'm pretty sure that Jacinta will agree with me on this one. The Kings and Illawarra have been making a bit of a thing about this over the last couple of years. But the original Freeway series has always been, Sydney Flames, Canberra Caps. Not only that, but even at the, because for many years the Flames were owned by Sydney Uni, it was also the Battle of the Unis. And that was one that I know that the Melbourne Boomers tried to get into because it's like, oh yeah, but we're sponsored by Deakin. And they were like, yeah, no, but you're not owned by Uni. You're sponsored by Uni. So no, you don't qualify.
It's just really interesting because thinking like Canberra have GWS and we pay like I think it's $2 million or $3 million a season to have them to have Canberra associated with Greater Western Sydney, the AFL team. And there is a bus that my mum gets on every time and goes to Sydney, and it drops her right outside the Sydney Cricket Ground ready for a game of AFL. So someone out there in the sports world is thinking about these things, but it just apparently doesn't translate to basketball.
I think
there'll be all the money in the AFL. Yeah.
And I think what Claire was saying before about how there's not a lot of funding or resources to do these extra mile things for the fans, that's a perfect situation where, again, things are dependent on the fans. Like the fans want to do that, but there's no support from the club or not necessarily from the league, say, but for individual clubs. I mean, like you said, Melbourne to Bendigo's 2 hours. That's easy. We used to do that with our rep team, hire a minibus, go to the Flames game and come back with our rep team, right?
We do that now on a Friday night. It's what you do. So how they can't get on board with it is,
It's just another one of those things that are so dependent on the fans' loyalty and commitment to the clubs and the league that they're willing to themselves go that extra mile to organise it to support a club. And I feel like it's a good opportunity for that to be more of a two-way street between the clubs and the fans.
Yeah.
Closest thing that I've seen to even something remotely similar was I think Townsville last year was sponsored by that Neurons scooter company, and they were offering like a discount for members to get to the game on a scooter from like the Townsville Casino, which were another sponsor.
So let me ask you something. Do you think that in the absence of the clubs taking an active step forward to doing things like this, is this something that fans or, the league in collaboration with the clubs or something could help to organise to try and better strengthen, the fan engagement with the league?
I think it should be a club thing personally.
I agree, but I'm talking about in the absence of the clubs stepping up.
Yeah.
I just think there has to be a place where fans can interact and say, look, if we can get 50 people to volunteer to jump on a bus, will you organise it for us? And then 50 people drop like a $5 PayPal thing as a deposit or something, and then everyone that's put their money down gets a seat on the bus. And then they follow up that with the payment once it's been organised. It can't be that hard. But obviously resources and time and money and proper staffing.
I think it just goes into the too hard basket, supporting the athlete, getting as many people to the game that we can, and, supporting everybody to that game. And what happens outside of that with lack of resources and obviously lack of money as well just makes all of that just dreams and really great ideas. But sorry, we can't do that idea because we actually don't have the people to do it. Yes, we'd love to get everybody up to Bendigo. It's only 2 hours up the road. Convoy could go up. But again, it's somebody that's got to organise that. And it's, somebody from within the club. And, if we've only got membership people that are part-timers that only work 2 days a week or 2 half days a week, these things don't get organised just because there's nobody to do them. So that's the disappointing. So somewhere along the line, maybe the league then needs to step in and have someone that can do that for each club.
Especially if you have an opportunity to tie in a sponsor, as you said, Lily, that is to do with travel. What a perfect opportunity to give your league sponsor extra opportunity to advertise by having these, kind of fan buses that go to away games and things like that.
But I always get the feeling from that sponsor that it's, organise your club and your function. It doesn't ever talk about the actual WNBL club that they're a sponsor for. It's almost like, if your local basketball or your local football or something needs to travel, give us a call. They should actually be proactive in saying, right, Boomers, you've got an away game. Who's on board?
Okay. I want to move away from the game day experience because I think we've kind of gone through that. And look, obviously there are, from the fan perspective, there are issues there that need to be looked at. But I want to move into the visibility of the sport. And I know this one's going to get kind of heated because the first thing we're going to talk about is broadcast and the media. And we may as well get, the elephant in the room out of the way first. And let's just throw out for opinions on the broadcast.
I'm going to start positive. I'm just going to say that I'm so grateful that everyone's cries and pleas of desperation on social media were heard. And I'm absolutely loving the increased broadcast brilliance. And I'm loving having replays. But the difference between the KO broadcast and the 9Now broadcast and the capabilities that both streaming services offer is the most frustrating thing I have ever experienced. Last week, the Caps played on Wednesday, and I was like, finally the Caps have a Wednesday night game. I can press go back 15, 20 seconds on KO, watch the replay, judge the ref's poor reffing ability or good reffing ability, and then go back to watching the game. Then I realised that the game was on 9 now and not on KO, and was heartbroken because the Bendigo game was the KO game. It's just so frustrating to have one game on once a week that I can go back in, and the other 6 or 5 or 4 games I don't have the capability to rewind, and then I'm waiting a couple of hours for the game to be uploaded. It's just so disheartening.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if they, if KO makes, or ESPN, makes this plan and says, right, Wednesday night games are on our channel. Well, if there's 2 games, you need to give us 2 streams, because I did the same thing, and it was like, oh, now I've got to go to 9 now. And it's just, I'm just going to agree with everything that Lily says, but the one thing I find so frustrating is a foul will get called and commentators have no idea who it's on, what happened. Like, there was a tech foul the other night. I cannot for the life of me find out why. And there were 2 shots down the other end. They weren't in the bonus, but then the lights came up. And I'm like, it's just frustrating that no one's at the actual game, that they don't show you a replay, or you do get a replay and it's of something completely not with the context that they're talking about. And for me, it's just, that's the stuff. You want to see a box score. You want to see who's got the fouls. So you've got your laptop going and you've got your app going. And I just feel as though it's great that we're getting so many more games on. It's fantastic. But I also think they've also taken a step back because the coverage is terrible. So, yeah, I find that really disappointing, is that now that I'm becoming so engaged in this game that you can't actually watch it the way you want to watch it and be able to go back and look at something, or just find out who a foul's on. It's, that's hard because the game's moved on. All of a sudden a tech foul's called, and that really gets you out of your seat. But you've got no idea who's got it.
Was that the tech foul on Shannon Seaborn?
No, I think it was on Kayla George.
Oh.
But it could have been on Shannon. There you go. I have no idea.
Unsportsmanlike on Wally or something. I remember that perhaps happened as well, and they thought it was something else, and all of a sudden they're walking down for free throws. And
terrible. And you try and you go, well, I can't go back. There's nothing on, and then, of course, you get onto Twitter and you get lost in the Twitter sphere because everybody's going nuts and you forget that you're watching the stream.
So. Okay,
and then
Nick.
You can't go back because now won't let you.
Okay, Nick, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this too.
The one that really bothered me earlier this year was we were having internet problems at my house. So anytime we'd have internet problems, it would cut off. And then to get back into it, you'd have to watch the ad to start the stream again. There was one, I think it was the game that Caps played against Townsville where Jade got injured. So I missed what had actually happened. And I got back into the stream just in time for the commentators to say, Jade Melbourne's injured, she's off the court. And there wasn't anything on Twitter about what had happened. I couldn't go back and see what had happened. I just knew that she was injured, not, ankle injury, knee injury, whatever sort of thing. And it was just kind of frustrating that you couldn't see what had happened. You couldn't find out. It wasn't until, I think it was you that replied to me on Twitter and was like, oh no, it looked like an ankle injury. And I'm like, okay, it's an ankle injury. It's probably not quite as bad. But it's just one of those frustrating things that you could have done last season that you can't do this year.
Okay, so I want to ask this question because part of the problem seems to be around, in terms of the quality, is the fact that the free-to-air isn't actually, what people think of as the real free-to-air channels. 9, 7, 10, right? It's their multi-channel service. So as a result, it's predominantly streaming, and therefore they bring in a smaller audience anyway. But part of the problem here is also there's a cost to the production. So there's limitations that come with the cost of the production. So here's my question to you. Would you, as fans, be happier with the games on KO, or would you be happier with them as they are?
Speaking as someone that has old Caps games recorded on cassette video that used to be on ABC free to air, there's a lot to be said for a good quality broadcast. And coming back to, like, you pay a membership fee, you expect something. You're a fan, you expect a certain level of quality. And I think the most frustrating thing that continually comes up on Twitter is that there are some NBL 1 streams that are more effective than what we're getting on 9 now. And we're talking about money and cost of doing things. How is an NBL 1 stream more effective than what we're getting on 9 now?
Okay, I'm gonna challenge you on that a little bit, and the challenge will be that yes, in the early stages of the broadcast this year or this season, I think it would be fair to say that the visual quality was poor, and I'll just leave it at that. But it has improved.
Definitely,
right?
And that's why I said, like, starting positive.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's improved. You know, especially over the last few rounds, I think it's improved. The thing is, do you find yourself? And I'm pretty sure I know what the answer to this is going to be, but do you find yourself sort of feeling challenged to watch the games on 9 now?
Either through quality of stream and, like Claire mentioned before, not having the box scores. We get that regularly in the NBL 1. But also, I'm not sure if it's like the commentators get fatigued because they're doing 3 games in 2 days and can't read the ref's hand signals as they're doing them, or if it's like, I'm just sick of the same people talking and I don't know. I just have such strong feelings about that too. We had like Alex Delaney on earlier in the season, and her knowing that Loz Mansfield was from Adelaide and was enjoying being back home and having that personal connection to the players, which is what the league is all about for me. I don't, like, there's only so many times that I can hear Alicia Froling has swapped shooting hands, and I love Alicia and I love her dearly, and that's such an amazing achievement. But just, my mum, fan for 18 years, mutes the commentary. Like, and it's so, like, multiple people I know listen with the commentary down. It's hard. It's really not accessible for long-term fans. It's really, I don't know, just swapping the commentators so we're not getting the same people all the time, so there's something there for everyone, offering a wider variety of commentators. Like, when I heard that Squin was going to be commentating, I'm like, great, someone that knows the game in and out, has those connections with the NBL 1 players, watches all year round. There's just something really meaty about women's sport with the connection that we all have with each other. I find the broadcast really inaccessible for a lot of reasons.
I feel as though it's like this Band-Aid, and they've given us this service while they try and fix the link between what's really, really good and what we're expecting. And so all of a sudden they've just given us this package and gone, we're just trying to work something out now. So watch this for a little while and we'll see what we can find for you. Because I just can't believe how far backwards it's gone from what we had to now. And, you know, I get so frustrated when you see the netball and the coverage and the money and their quality of broadcast, and it's everywhere, and it's so engaging to watch, and it's great to listen because the people that do the commentating know everything about these girls. Jacinta, we need you commentating. We need your insights into all these people. You give me my wealth of knowledge. Like, I would be lost in the WNBL without you. So I was like, get this girl behind a microphone, because, you know, it's just something different, something that people that know the players, not just Opal players, and not just how great Wally is, and, you know, Jade Melbourne's going to be a superstar. We hear these same names every single broadcast. We all know it. We all see it. We all watch it. But tell us about the other ones. Tell us about the, you know, good child from the Boomers who's dropping threes from everywhere. Give us a little insight, which I've got to go and search her up because she's new to me. She's one of our players. I need to learn about her. Jacinta does most of it for me when I log on in the mornings, but they really need to broaden. They need to have someone that's going to tell us about all these other players. It's not just a starting 5. It's not just that. So it's not just the broadcasting, but I'm Lily, it's the commentators as well. Get Jacinta on. I'm going to start it on Twitter. I'm doing it now.
And just for the record, didn't prompt Claire to give me a boot.
No, payments in the mail. I know.
That's a bit we're not supposed to say on air, but no, honestly, though, I appreciate the feedback from both of you. With the commentary, I think in relation to the broadcast and the commentary, all the broadcasting now is done remotely does make the commentator's job harder in terms of visibility and being there at the game to see it firsthand. Makes it a lot easier for the commentator to do their job properly in that sense. So,
Jacinta, would you be watching the 9 Now feed and that's what you commentate off? You don't get, as you know, when you do FIBA or something like that, you're not getting any different feed than anybody else.
No, so the times I've done a FIBA game, it is from my laptop and I'm getting a feed from, Madagascar or wherever the game's happening. So that is essentially like I'm sitting there and the angle is from the middle of the court. And sometimes they go for an interesting zoom angle, which isn't helpful at particular times. That also happens in WNBL. But when the whole two games I did for WNBL, it was in a room in Mascot and I had 2 TV screens and it was the direct feed from the game. When we received the feed in the studio, it is in real time, so what we're saying is right. But what I've noticed with the broadcasts when I've been watching it now as a fan is the slight delay between the commentary and the action of play, and that really bugs me. I feel like that's a disservice to both the game and what the commentators are providing. But the other thing is I don't want it to be a reflection on the commentators because I feel like they're doing the best with what they've got. So the last game was Julia Montesano and Laurie Chiswick, who are, great together, have the love for each other, work really well. But the way it was, Julia's play-by-play was delayed. It wasn't in sync essentially, and then they were missing a couple of calls. So I don't want what they're being provided to be a reflection on them as skills, but I do also agree with Lily in terms of variety of commentators because as a commentator, when you do a lot of games in a row, it is very easy to be very copy and paste in a sense of saying the same phrases or perhaps falling into a pattern or focusing on the same things. And Lily and I have spoken off air about how there is definitely not so much a bias, but there is like a lean towards particular players, like you were saying, Claire, like always. And not anything against the players that are being mentioned.
No, not at all.
Melbourne's and your own players. But to me, that is a reflection, particularly with the play-by-play commentators, that they are there to do a job as a sports commentator and not as a basketball commentator. Yeah. So I've even met people who do play-by-play and it's very obvious they only know, or games I've even watched, it's very obvious the play-by-play only knows the opals. But they're not going to be able to say, be able to be confident to call out the difference between Basham and Batish when Adelaide are playing because they look quite similar. But if you know the league, if you're a basketball commentator versus being a sports commentator, you've got that down pat. I think that makes a massive difference, and you can tell sometimes who knows what. And I think when it comes to how it's a professional league and we need to present it with that level of professionalism, it needs to go that extra mile of having basketball commentators and putting the money into the broadcast like you compared to netball and stuff before, Claire.
And I think a level of that comes back to the club. I'd like to see clubs take responsibility for the player rosters being up to date online. And I'd also like to see potentially a button that you can press that has the player saying their own name. I think it was Jacinta that tweeted about Potch's pronunciation. And we've seen it countless times with Abby Cubillo, Olivia Pupa. It's just a continual thing that comes up, which makes the world of difference in just respect and professionalism, but also for fans that just get frustrated.
Yeah, and I found that out because I messaged her on Instagram and said, look, if I'm going to commentate your games, I want to do you the respect of pronouncing your name correctly. Can you, tell me how to pronounce it? So that's how I knew. And sure, if you're a sports commentator, I'm sure the likes of John Casey, etc., would go to those lengths. But at what point do you need to go to those lengths versus should that not be provided for you? So when we do the FIBA games, we get a voice memo of someone pronouncing the players' names correctly because sometimes it will read one way and it's pronounced completely differently. And sometimes it doesn't help as well because some names are pretty complicated, but which is what I experienced. But at least it's the opportunity to get it right, or at least a right attempt. I remember there was also a tweet, perhaps more in reference to NBL, but saying how they'd like the commentators to have a bit more understanding or present some more deeper statistics in terms of past, points off the bench, in terms of rebounding percentage per quarter or the plus minus when a particular player is on. That's great, but none of that's made available to us. Like we have the FIBA live stats like everyone else, and even that's got a delay. There's been lots of games here or NBL 1 where I would go, oh, I'm pretty sure so-and-so's up to their 4th assist, and I'll go to the live stats and go, oh, no, I was wrong, it's 3. And then 5 minutes later, no, I was right, it was 4. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. There's definitely room for improvement in all aspects of the broadcast, but I guess it also goes back to resources and availability too. So
let me ask something, because one of the things that seems to have come across to me just over this last few minutes of conversation is there's been a lot mentioned about the statistics, about, the players and so on. But I've got a question. How do you include people who are new to the league? Because, you really want to get into the stats and the numbers and so on. And there are people who really get right into that, no question. But people who are coming in new to the league, and I'm talking about people, here's an example, you've got kids, they've started playing basketball, so it may not be a sport that you were necessarily, as a parent, you were necessarily across. You've started to watch basketball as well, and there's a whole lot going on where you just look at it and go, I have no idea what's happening. Should that be something that the broadcast should address?
I was just having a very similar conversation with Squin the other day, actually, kind of saying that sometimes I struggle to know what like a split line D is, and I even asked Squin that during the World Cup. Can you explain that to me? Can you explain certain plays and things like that? So many, and Twitter, great place. Like I know that any of the pick and roll team, both you and Jacinta would be so understanding if I asked a question. But I do think there is a gap in the commentary where basic things are being left out, and then not so interesting things are being repeated multiple times in a broadcast.
Your reaction, Claire, was pretty telling there. What it seems like you may have a bit of input there.
No, I was just thinking it's a great idea, because I'm actually at the point now. So my daughter's under 18, so there's a lot of plays, and their playbook is huge. And you hear them talking, and being the team manager, you're in on the, the tactics and all of that. I've got no idea what they're talking about. And it's this, this split line. I've worked that out now. But, I didn't know about this charge zone and other sort of things. Someone could come up with a fantastic graphic on all of these type of things and run them on the screens, like how pick and roll works, and the kids then begin to understand it instead of following like NBL and everything's about a slam dunk. Well, not so much. There's some real merit in that, in educating instead of repeating how great Jade Melbourne is.
Now we don't want to be taking away from Jade Melbourne here.
No, oh my God, she is just watching her at the World Cup and how she was always on the the fringe and just part of that team, and the way they took her in, and it really was it's a special bunch of women, and you just want your kids to grow up with an ounce of that sort of, I'm going to get there one day and I'm going to be in that circle, and she is in that circle, and every bit deserves to be there. She is, love her. If she comes to Melbourne, love her even more.
Just wanted to build off what you were saying about educating. I remember during the WNBA season, it drove me insane, but there was a continual repeat of Skylar Diggins-Smith with, I think it was Chris Paul or someone from the Phoenix Suns, demonstrating a moving screen with a chair. And I just thought, okay, I've seen that 50 billion times, but that's exactly the type of thing that they could be running at quarter time or half time instead of the horrible music that we're forced to put up with.
Yeah. And they should get the players to do it. Didn't they have something at the start of the World Cup where the players were doing, I vaguely remember something, but if they have your starting fives or even your development players, anybody, I just think educating so we understand it more, so we don't get as frustrated with the reps and the telecast, because we're actually able to watch it and go, okay, no, I see what they were doing there. Even if the stats don't come up or the commentators haven't caught up, you've at least got some idea as to what's going on.
And the content,
I think that's a really good thing.
And the content is there. Like Caps in the off season had skill videos uploaded to their Instagram, and kids that went and posted and uploaded them repeating the skills went into the competition to win like a ball or a shirt or something. So just even asking the clubs, reaching out, do you have any content that we can use for halftime? And Tess at the moment, Tess Madgen on the halftime spruiking she hoops and talking about the clubs and camps and things like that. So important. And it's all there and ready to be used. It's frustrating that it's not.
Okay. Nick, I want to get your opinion on that, about the more entry-level type explanations.
I'm going to say this, and it's immediately going to be something that we can't do because of resources. But something that the NRL does really well on some of their broadcasts is when they do the pre-game, they have the retired players going through, breaking down a play and seeing this is why this player does this. This happens here, and then this can happen here because of that. Sure, it would be very hard to do because of resources, but if you had someone in the comm box with a screen at halftime, which, I mean, they're not all even in the same place at halftime, but if you had a screen that you could go, okay, this is what Jade Melbourne's seeing here. This defender's coming this way, this defender's sagging off here, and this person's in the corner. This is how this play happens. You know, people could look at that and go, okay, I see how that works, but it's immediately something that we can't do because we don't have the resources to have those sort of streams that they have in the NRL. That it would be great if we could have it, but we just can't do it right now.
Yeah.
I think that would be awesome, actually, Nick, because I know that sometimes Peter Hooley does it for the NBL, him being, you know, a former elite player. And through my own experience recently, through another platform, I really like that all three of you have said how you'd still want some insight, like the balance between the really nerdy stuff that we know and love in terms of stats, but also the rules of pick and roll, how to read a pick and rolls, the importance of split line D. So it sounds like generally it would be beneficial to have a balance, but without being too repetitive of just the stuff you can look up on Wikipedia about, you know, so-and-so growing up in Lizzie Tonks living from Coffs Harbour, that kind of stuff. But it's still a good point, Nick, and understandably there probably isn't resources to do it at the moment with the live broadcast, but perhaps there could be an opportunity where we go through particular, you know, really important or highlight plays from the week, and that can be broken down and put up on social media, for example, you know, putting your idea and Lily's example of what the Caps used to do with skills. So kind of be like, oh, this play of when, you know, Shyla and Keely Froling were in this high pick and roll, and then the two defenders guarded Keely, which meant Shyla was open for the three, like that kind of stuff. Just giving WNBL free ideas here, aren't we?
It's even like as easy as like everyone tweets such great things and things that I don't notice. And I remember during the hub season, they were putting tweets on the broadcast. Small things like that that offer an insight and engage fans in a totally different way.
And sometimes if you see a tweet on there, like on Q&A, #Quanda, people like are more likely to kind of, I guess, participate as well.
And in a positive way. Like if I knew the WNBL were reading my tweets, I wouldn't post half the stuff I post.
I know, I learned that the hard way, but I'll give you that story off air.
Yeah, I think I know the story.
You know the story, Paul.
Yeah. This is just the first part of this podcast where loyal fans of our WNBL teams share their hopes and wishes for the sport they love and support. Be sure to listen to the second instalment coming soon. Here's just a small sample of what's in part 2, dropping next week. So, okay, I want to ask something else, and that is, in terms of news coverage of the WNBL, it has improved. And it's been a bit up and down. I would like to think that a lot of the coverage that's out there is more than just trying to give lip service to the league. But I'd like to get your opinions on what you see and what you think of the quality of what you're seeing.
Pretty similar to the commentary. I'm kind of sick of seeing articles about the same players repeated. Give me a little more depth about how the team is going. If you're going to rag on Veely, mention that she's like hand raised, ball ace, Poch, and all the other COE girls that are absolutely killing it. Offer me something different other than Caps are losing, all their players are injured. Offer me stuff about Mila Goodchild. Offer me stuff about Chloe Bibby and all the kids that are coming back from the college system and are killing it.
Shooting the Breeze can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Spotify and iHeartRadio. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with all your friends.